Lots of key injuries keeping the Bucs shorthanded heading into a huge game. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you 5 days a week along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Keys to victory and predictions coming up in a little bit, but we have to start with the insane injury report, and it's not just the Bucs that are going to be without key players. Heading into Sunday, the Buccaneers have already ruled out 6 players: Mike Evans, Bucky Irving, Benjamin Morrison, Zyon McCollum, Josh Williams, and Chris Godwin. Godwin and McCollum were both held out of practice all week, and it appears as though Godwin is dealing with a fibula injury on that surgically repaired leg. However, Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times reported that the two injuries are not the same. It's actually a different area than where his leg broke last year. McCollum had a procedure on his thumb that he played through last week. It's not a new injury, and it was something that he was playing through, had a minor procedure on it after Sunday's win against the Seahawks. So hopefully this is just a 1-week thing. Running back Josh Williams was expected to play Sunday in Bucky's absence, but suffered a concussion at practice on Thursday. That's causing him to be ruled out. So expect Owen Wright, who was just signed to the practice squad, to be elevated for this game as the third running back. The good news is Jamel Dean is going to play. I actually had one of the insiders text me and say, thank God for Jamel Dean. I never thought I would say that, but Jamel Dean has been absolutely fantastic this year. He is going to be back on the field Sunday. He was a full participant Thursday and Friday. He's good to go. No injury designation heading into this game. However, the Bucs are still going to be in the same predicament that they were last week, with McCollum and Dean just basically swapping places. Hopefully, they learn from their mistakes and they elevate Bryce Hall this time instead of trying to roll with Kindle Vildor as the other corner. But the other good news is that Christian Izien appears to be on his way back. He is listed as questionable, but practiced all week, including being a full participant on Friday. That could really help Bowles shuffle some things around, perhaps even starting Izien at nickel corner, moving Parrish to the outside, or you could move Parrish outside, drop Tyke down to nickel, and then have Izien back there at safety alongside Antoine Winfield Jr. Either way, it allows for some stronger players to be on the field in the secondary than what we saw last week. As far as the Godwin injury is concerned, Richard, I see you in the chat. No, Benjamin Morrison is out for this game. I expect him to be back relatively soon. But, as far as the Godwin injury is concerned, we saw him limp off the field a little bit on Sunday in the win against Seattle. I like to correlate a lot of these things to what I've seen my son go through, just because I've seen it up close and personal. And again, I'm not comparing my son to a professional athlete. However, he's back on the ice less than a year after getting his ACL surgery done. And, after the last couple of weeks of playing hockey, he's talked about how his hip and his thigh on his left side hurt after having that right ACL repaired. I think in Godwin's situation, this very much could be a compensation issue. That's exactly what my son has been doing. He's sore because he's even subconsciously overcompensating, trying to protect that surgically repaired knee. Godwin might be moving around a little differently. He might be putting more pressure and more weight on different parts of his leg to try to protect that surgically repaired ankle, to try to stay on the field, and the overcompensation for the injury has caused some sort of strain or issue in a different part of his leg. So I think that's probably what he's dealing with. Again, not a medical professional, but that would be my guess, especially since the two injuries are not in the same place. That to me is really, really telling. For the 49ers, they are going to be without defensive linemen Kevin Givens and Yetur Gross-Matos, receivers Ricky Pearsall and Jordan Watkins, and quarterback Brock Purdy. Backup quarterback Mac Jones is questionable, but is expected to play as he deals with knee and oblique injuries. Then you have receiver Juwan Jennings, who is questionable after being limited in practice Thursday and Friday. He's missed a few games with ankle and rib injuries, but his presence will certainly help a receiving corps that is currently being led by Kendrick Bourne. Defensive linemen Alfred Collins and Kalia Davis are also questionable, as is cornerback Upton Stout. That is somebody that Eric Crocker talked about on our crossover episode. So if you didn't catch that, go back and check it out. Eric Crocker there of Locked On 49ers. He had mentioned Stout as a potential weak spot on the 49ers defense if he was lined up against Emeka Egbuka in this game. All in all, there are 11 players that have been ruled out for this game between the Bucs and the 49ers. And while you can point to the Bucs having the more significant names overall on those lists, you also have to remember that George Kittle and Nick Bosa are both out as well. They're not listed on the injury report because they're on injured reserve. So those guys didn't even factor in to all of the players being declared out for San Francisco. Not having Godwin hurts, even though he hasn't been himself and he's working his way back from that injury from last season. Having him out there was still a threat to the opposing defense. Now it's going to be on Egbuka to continue his dominance, but he's going to be complemented by guys like Shep, Ryan Miller, Tez Johnson, and Cam Johnson. The 49ers are going to be able to really focus all of their efforts on stopping Egbuka in this game and forcing Baker to try to move the ball by looking to Tez, Miller, Cade Otton, Rachaad White out of the backfield. Robert Saleh is no slouch as a defensive coordinator, and he's going to find a way to try to eliminate the Bucs' best player from this game. The optimistic side is to say that these guys are all coming back at some point, right? Evans could be back next week. Bucky is going to be back sooner than later. McCollum and Morrison are going to be back soon. I just mentioned I think McCollum is probably only going to miss 1 week. I think Morrison is probably in play for next week since that hamstring is not as severe as the one that he suffered during training camp. So the Bucs really just have to tread water until these guys start popping back up. This game is a huge one when it comes to potential playoff implications, and you don't want your two losses on the season to be to the Niners and the Eagles, but I would actually rather have the Bucs start getting these guys back next week against the Detroit Lions rather than being rushed back for this game. The Lions look absolutely unstoppable right now. So if you get, let's say, half of these players back next week for the Monday night game in Detroit, let's say you get Evans, Bucky, and McCollum, or Morrison. You can interchange those two. If you get 3 of those guys back next week, that is going to be far more important than this week, because even though I look at both of these games, against the Niners, against the Lions as must wins because of the potential playoff implications that you could see down the line, if you're going to be missing this many key players, then it's probably better to have it come against the other team that's missing just as many key players. It kind of levels the playing field for a shorthanded Buccaneers because the Niners are dealing with a lot of the same issues. So much rather have it going on this week than next week against a healthy Lions team. But I think we're going to have some good news next week as we start talking about some of these injuries and some of these guys starting to work their way back. Going to jump into the chat real quick. David in the chat, Tez is definitely going to start to see more action the more he picks up the offense. You can tell Bowles really likes him. I agree 100%. He looked really good against the Seahawks. Obviously, that's the best that he's looked so far in his rookie season. I will talk more about Tez coming up in just a little bit, but I think he's going to play a huge role in this game if the Buccaneers are going to be able to manufacture some points and extend some drives. I talked on the crossover about they need to put together these 12, 14, 15 play drives, the death by 1,000 paper cuts. Tez is going to be a huge part of that. They're going to have to get him the ball in space to make plays with his legs and extend some of these drives. Reginald in the chat, Eagles got smoked by the Giants last night. Yeah, and guess who had Cam Scattaboo on his bench in fantasy? Yeah, this guy. The logic was sound. I hate fantasy football, and I hate hockey. How are the Lightning going to go up 3-1 in their season opener at home and lose 5-4? Sports are stupid, and they make me angry all the time. Let's see. We have the Boat Doctor. Bro, all our weapons are injured. Not all of them. Not all of them. The biggest names outside of Emeka Egbuka are injured, but not all the weapons. And I trust Baker Mayfield to do some work with the weapons that he still has. All right, we are going to talk about the keys to victory. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters, and their trade master perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit SupplyHouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's SupplyHouse.com. Real people, real service. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every single day. Reminder that you can follow our show and hear new episodes ad-free daily on Amazon Music. All right, keys to victory for the Buccaneers as they take on the 49ers. I'm going to start this one with the offensive side of the ball, and the Bucs are going to have to utilize the short passing game all day long. We might be in store. I'm not calling for it. He was Evans' predicted player of the game, but we might be in store for Egbuka's worst game to date. I touched on it just a moment ago, but Egbuka is the guy that Saleh is not going to allow to have an easy day. He is going to be doubled all game long. He is not going to get a ton of action his way because the Niners are going to force the ball into someone else's hands. This has the potential to be a big Cade Otton game. Otton is coming off his best game of the season. He was finally starting to get utilized more in the passing game. And the 49ers have not been overly stout against the tight end this season. And while they aren't exactly being gashed, there are going to be opportunities out there for Otton. He may only wind up with 4 or 5 receptions, but those could all be first down targets. He's going to be the guy that keeps drives going, gives Baker that safety net to check down to on those crucial third down plays. That's how Otton got so much work last year in the absence of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin during that month-long stretch. I expect the same here because the 49ers are a matchup that can favor the tight end. Again, tight ends have not put up gaudy numbers against the Buccaneers, but they have racked in 5, 6, 7 receptions in these games against San Francisco. There will be chances for Cade Otton to make some big plays. And that's what this offense is going to have to boil down to, converting on third down and just chipping away slowly and methodically. You don't need a 77-yard or a 55-yard bomb to Egbuka in this one. It would be nice. I mean, I would love it, but you don't need that kind of play to be called. Sterling Shepard has quietly had a very good year. 17 receptions on 24 targets for 191 yards and a touchdown. He's averaging over 11 yards per reception, and 10 of his 17 catches have resulted in a first down this season. That's the guy you're going to see Baker lean on a lot outside of Cade Otton. There are going to be design plays to get Tez the ball in space, try to hit him on those shallow crosses and those quick slants just to try to let him make plays after the catch. This 49ers defense is really, really good outside of their pass rush. Their pass rush has been woefully bad compared to 49ers teams of recent past. But we caught a glimpse of what the potential is for Tez Johnson last week. I think Grizz is going to need him to step up big time in this game, and he's going to get his number called on more than just a couple of occasions. I trust Rashad to take care of business on his end. Need to see more out of Tucker because he has not taken advantage of his opportunities, but Rachaad White was great last week. I expect that to be the case again this week, especially in the passing game and picking up those blitzes as the 49ers try to manufacture some pass rush, since their 4 down linemen are not getting the job done the way they normally do in the absence of Bosa. Defensively, it's all about 2 guys, Christian McCaffrey and Tonjes. The Bucs have been absolutely abused by tight ends this season, and McCaffrey is a bigger factor in the passing game than the running game. If I was Todd Bowles, I'm not, but if I was, I think that I would want to send Izien out there on the field as the McCaffrey guy. If he gets a handoff, then Izien needs to sprint into the backfield and make the tackle, or at least get to him, slow him down, and allow reinforcements to come in and make the tackle. But if he goes out on a route, then Izien needs to be the sole player responsible for covering him all game long. That's how dangerous McCaffrey can be. You cannot leave that responsibility to a linebacker, not with the way that the Bucs linebackers have been in coverage this season. They're going to have enough trouble with Tonjes. Dedicate either a safety or a corner to spy and shadow McCaffrey all day long. This dude is getting first downs on over 27% of his touches on the road this season. 23 receptions on 26 targets in road games. He's been an absolute monster. You have to keep him in check if you're going to give yourselves a chance to win this game. Mac Jones has been really, really solid in place of Brock Purdy this year, but McCaffrey is a big reason why. He's been that steady, reliable presence in the passing game to help Mac when he's in trouble. That's where the Bucs can find a way to not only kill drives for San Francisco, but potentially bait Jones into turnovers, which he has been prone to do this season. As for Tonjes, the Bucs just gave up 7 receptions for over 50 yards and 2 touchdowns to A.J. Barner in Seattle. Kyle Pitts cooked him. Dalton Schultz cooked him in Houston. Dallas Goedert cooked him 2 weeks ago. This team has not figured out how to stop a tight end yet through 5 weeks. I would almost say that the linebackers shouldn't be the ones in charge of covering Tonjes, but if you're going to dedicate a player to cover McCaffrey, you also cannot take a safety and pull them down to cover Tonjes. You need Levante and Voss to step up in a big way in coverage. If you're looking at PFF, Levante's coverage grades are well on their way to being the worst by a wide margin of his career. Overall on the season, his coverage grade is at a 39.7. His previous career low was last year at a 56.9. He's allowing over 85% of targets his way to be caught this season. That is not good at all. As for Voss, he's actually improved as the season has gone on. The first 2 weeks, both of his coverage grades were under a 30, but since then, he's had a 55.2, a 40.8, and then another 55.2. He's coming off of his best week of the season with a pass rush grade near 90 against Seattle. So he is trending in the right direction, just not quite to the level that we expected him to be at this point. At the end of the day, Tonjes is going to have opportunities. It's just going to be about minimizing the damage. Do not let him extend drives. Do not let him get yards after the catch. Levante and Voss really have to show some improved play this week with the Bucs being so shorthanded. And then you have to show some improved play heading into a game against the Lions where you're going to face Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and those guys are going to be the responsibility of the linebackers. I am very uncomfortable with that matchup as it stands right now. I'm going to jump into the chat again, real quick before we hit the next break. I did see a couple of people that Demon Hunter. Do you think Izzy can cover CMC? Yes, I do. I think that Izzy would be a solid matchup to cover CMC in pass coverage. He doesn't have, the size to really be able to, wrestle down McCaffrey one-on-one. I think that could lead to some issues, but that's why I mentioned you slow him down enough to allow reinforcements to appear. And then Demon Hunter followed up. He said, why Izzy and not Tyke or Hempfield? Remember, Izzy is that kind of that chess piece that Todd Bowles loves to move all over the field. He can play safety. He can play corner. He can play outside. He can play nickel. He can do all of those things. So why not take that guy who is so versatile and just put him on McCaffrey? He can cover. He can get that job done. Leave him as that extra piece on defense to handle that duty instead of taking Antoine or Tyke out of their positions and rearranging things more than you already have to with the injury to Zyon McCollum. That's why I picked Izzy because I feel like in coverage, he can get the job done and you're not weakening the back end of the defense by taking Tyke away or taking Antoine away for that sole purpose. You need those guys to do other things. You still need them coming on blitzes. You still need them potentially picking up Tonjes based on the coverage. You still need them to pick up other receivers or, to crash the box in run defense. So my thought process there was leave those guys where they're at their best and bring in this wild card that you have that can do all of those things to be solely dedicated for that purpose. And on top of that, if he's out there in the first, 4 or 5 times that McCaffrey goes out on a route and Izzy follows him, well, now the chess match with Shanahan starts to come into play. And he's like, okay, well, now I'm going to send McCaffrey out to clear Izzy in order to open up, Tonjes on a crossing route or whoever. And at that point, that's when Todd Bowles could send Izzy on a corner blitz, something else that he's been really, really successful with as he shifts the coverage, elsewhere. So I think it would play into Bowles' strength to have Izzy in that role rather than taking somebody else out of their position. All right, we have predictions coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. NFL season is here and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is where I always go to place all my parlays, my prop bets, my game bets for just about every sport. I've told you guys over and over about my friend group 10-leg parlay that we do each and every week. It really adds a lot of fun to our NFL Sundays. The Buccaneers and 49ers square off at Raymond James Stadium for a chance to remain among the top teams in the NFC. The Buccaneers are 3.5-point home favorites with an over-under of 47.5. The Bucs are also sitting at -700 to make the playoffs. That's the second best odds in the NFL behind the Buffalo Bills, and they're -370 to win the NFC South. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Wrapping things up here on a live preview edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. I just heard from Evan, so thank goodness he is sticking with his predictions. He didn't have any changes. Just a quick reminder, his bold prediction was 1 total punt per team. His predicted player of the game was Emeka Egbuka, and his score prediction was 28-27 Bucs. Start dropping your bolds, your players, and your score predictions in the chat. We will get to as many of those as we can at the very end of the show. But here's my bold prediction for this one. The Bucs defense forces 3 takeaways. The Bucs defense has been hot when it comes to forcing turnovers, and the Niners like to turn them over in bunches. 2 games already where the Niners have turned it over at least twice, and they have turned it over in 4 of their 5 games this season. The Bucs have taken the ball away twice in 2 of the last 3 games, and I think this is a game where you can get after Mac Jones a little bit, you can force him into some bad throws, or even get some strip sacks while he's hobbled a little on that injured knee. If the Bucs are going to win, the defense needs to really give the offense as many bites of the apple as possible. I'm looking for them to step up their game and make it a long day for Mac Jones. My predicted player of the game, right along the same theme, it's Vita Vea. This is the guy that has to set the tone. Jones has been sacked 5 times in 3 games, and Vea has a massive advantage against Niners starting center Jake Brendel. If the Bucs are going to generate the kind of pressure that they need to in order to get these takeaways, you have to have Vita dominate like he did the second half against the Eagles. Yaya and Reddick have done fine off of the edges in terms of pressure, but they haven't been finishing with sacks. With Vea blowing up the middle, this could be one of those games where Jones ends up running himself into trouble on the edges, running into Reddick, running into Yaya, while trying to run away from the trouble being created up the middle by Vita Vea. And then, of course, the lanes that are going to get cleared for Greg Gaines, Logan Hall, Elijah Roberts, and the rest of that defensive line. It all starts with big number 50, and he's going to be a huge reason why if the Bucs get out of this thing with a win. My score prediction, it's going to be another nasty 3 hours of stress and ugliness. But I go back to what this team has been able to do this year. They snap a streak of primetime games where they kept losing. They've snapped a losing streak in throwbacks. And while they didn't beat the Eagles, a streak was snapped there too. So so far through 5 weeks, you have seen 3 different Buccaneers streaks get snapped. You can throw in a fourth if you want to include the 100 yards rushing for and less than 100 against. Good teams find a way to win, period. It doesn't matter who they're missing, what the score is at any given moment in a game. They find a way to overcome and win. Almost saw it against the Eagles. We're talking about one bad Baker decision away from potentially being 5-0 at this point in the season. That's what this team has done. They have found a way to overcome and win. No Evans, no Godwin, no Bucky, no Cansey, no McCollum, no J-Mac, no offensive line for 3 weeks, no Luke Gedeke. It hasn't mattered. They figured it out. I said 2 weeks ago that it seems like there's always that team or that coach that has your number. And for Jalen Hurts, that team was the Bucs and that coach was Todd Bowles. But the Eagles went out and they got a huge win on the road. For Todd Bowles, that team has been the Niners and that coach has been Kyle Shanahan. I think this is another streak that gets snapped. Give me the Bucs to win this one 26-23. Yes, I am calling on Illinois-Ohio State weekend for another game winner off of the leg of Illinois legend Chase McLaughlin. All right, let's get into some of your predictions. Let's see. Demon Hunter, 31-27 Tampa. Bull prediction, Izzy and Parrish both get a pick 6. Holy moly. And we block a punt or a field goal. Player of the game, Baker and Emeka Egbuka. You know what? If the Bucs block a punt or a kick, that's cool. That's awesome. I just want the Bucs special teams themselves to not suck. Yeah, that's the nicest way that I could put it. Can all of the facets of special teams play well in this game? Please. I don't think that's too much to ask. Let's see. RL Wolf says the Bucs sack Mac Jones 6 times. I like that one. Bantry. Bucs win 28-17. Reddick has 2+ sacks. Vita with a pick 6. Richard in the chat. Hot take. Bucs finally take a victory formation and win 26-21. Reginald. White scores twice, once on the ground, once through the air. Demon Hunter reminds everyone to take their blood pressure meds an hour before kickoff. My guy, David Stackman, he says, we broke the Eagles. You may not be wrong. Let's see. David, 31-17 Bucs. Reginald Baker has 4 touchdowns to 3 different players. Danette, Danette. I actually think the Bucs will win handily this week. Just a gut feeling. Again, Insider David, my guy, perfect QBR for Baker. Paul says, bold prediction, Baker with 3 touchdowns, Tez, Egbuka, Cade, plus Rashad with a touchdown. Bucs win 28-17. Hopefully we're talking about a victory after this one. However, I will take this opportunity to tell you all, we will not be talking about a victory live Sunday night. I already forewarned the insiders. Basically, my next week is a little bit skewed. This is the NFL's fault. The reason you're not getting a live show Sunday night is 100% the NFL's fault because they flexed this game from 1 o'clock to 4:25. Well, 4 months ago, my wife, for my birthday, gave me tickets to go see a comedian down in Cincinnati. And that show starts at 7. I'm going to have to leave the house as kickoff is happening. I will not get to watch the game live, which means that by the time I get home, I will then watch the game, and I will be coming to you live Monday morning. I don't have a set time yet, probably around like 10 or 11, but we will still have a live reaction show. It's just going to be coming Monday morning instead of Sunday night. And then I will be out of town starting Thursday of next week. My son and I leave on Thursday, and then we will not get home until Saturday night of next week. So there will be no live preview episode next Friday. Luckily, the Bucs play Monday night next week. So we're going to do our live preview episode Sunday night of next week instead of Friday night. So have to shuffle some things around. I'll have to do the Friday episode a little bit earlier to make sure that you're still getting one, but a very busy week coming up for me, but it's going to be a really fun one. It's going to be really exciting. Let's start this thing off with a win on Sunday. David Stackman in the chat, he says, what comedian? Jimmy Carr. Jimmy Carr is coming to Tap Theater in Cincinnati. I know you know Tap Theater very well. And then Paul in the chat says, McCartney, ? Yes, going to see Paul McCartney with my son next week. That's going to be so much fun. Been looking forward to that for a very, very long time. So with all of that said, that's going to do it for this episode. We will be back Monday morning live for the reaction of the Bucs 49ers game. Until then, please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. You can follow on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Bucs at both of those places. Make sure that you are following on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. If you want to support the show, but you don't want to be an insider, it's real simple. Leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts and like this episode on YouTube. It does really help other Buccaneers fans find the show. And we want as many to find the show as possible because you guys in these live reaction episodes have been crushing it. The chat has been blowing up. We've had a ton of live viewers. We want this thing to continue to grow all season long. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.